The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Game Toppers, a gorgeous, gorgeous summer, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and probably not role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Reload from Kolossal Games. Then they take a look back at their review of The King's Dilemma. And now, The Dukes of Dice.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
Oof, that's an and. And you're joining us for episode 276, King of the Hill. King of the Hill, that title thanks to Justin Jacobson from Restoration Games. King of the Hill because we're talking about the King's Dilemma. There's a king in King's Dilemma, right? That's our look back game. What do we call it? Duke's Double Take.
Yeah, usually.
It's a Saturday morning.
I should note, by the way, Restoration Games, future ex-sponsor of the Dukes of Dice.
Okay, perfect.
In the future, they will have been a sponsor and then have decided it wasn't worth the investment. So future ex-sponsor. Anyway.
Love it. Love it. Love the self-deprecating. Love it. Deprecation. Self-deprecation? That sounds like a worse word. Deprecation. It sounds like...
Yeah, it sounds bad,
like
but it's...
like defecation?
No, I know what you were getting at. You didn't need to say it.
Well, I said it anyway, because, you know, I feel a little slow because we're recording on a Saturday morning, so I'm assuming you feel a little slow, but maybe not.
I had a nice cup of coffee. I was playing around with my daughter. Ruby is crawling up a storm. I sent you a video of this. She was chasing after a blanket. It's amazing. You can have a whole bunch of toys on the ground, and it's, as you know, this is cliche, but it's the cardboard box they really care about, but that's absolutely true in her case. And she was kind of off exploring into distant corners. She is on the move. So I know I'm energized, man. I'm ready to do this.
Well, to complete my thought, Alex.
Yeah.
King of the Hill, because we're talking about the King's Dilemma, and we're talking about Reload, which is a kind of a battle royale game. So kind of that's the King of the Hill. So yeah, good job, Justin. And we actually get help naming all of our episodes over on our Board Game Geek Guild. That's Guild number 2008. And we've got some runners up, which we'll give you at the end of the episode. So Alex, I'm not going to bother to ask how you're doing because you've already told us.
Woo! Yeah.
Okay,
that's
perfect.
all I got. Oh, sorry.
That's
how
all
are
you
you
got.
doing? Was that
great? I'm doing just splendid. We're in like week, I don't know, of construction, and we keep at the office, and we keep running into problems. The building keeps hiring painters, and then they show up either drunk or high, and then they're dismissed, or then another company starts, and then we don't see them for like 3 days. So, it's been a mess. It's been an absolute mess. But other than that, everything's gravy.
I have managing / building an office has not been on the to-do list of things I would enjoy doing in my professional career. Maybe it'll happen. I did say when I was graduating from college, all right, maybe backup option I'll do, local TV news, but I'm definitely not going to do it back in New Mexico. And then a year and a half later, I was back in New Mexico doing local TV news. So there you go. Sometimes you make plans and someone laughs. Sean, you seem stunned.
No, it was just... I don't know. I just found it amusing how you managed to make it a story about yourself. How my plight turned into a story about Alex.
Look, Sean... sometimes you come into something feeling good, and like you want to share yourself with the world, and I'm trying to share myself with the whole world, Sean, or at least the whole percentage of the world that listens to this podcast, which is not a very large percentage as the world goes. I swear this is just coffee.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, let's talk about some board games, Alex, shall we?
Okay. Yeah, you go first.
Okay, I'm going to start. So I've got a full slate here, which is pretty nice. So Golem, not Golem, not the little Lord of the Rings dude, but Golem. I got a chance to play this. This is from Ludo Creations. It's designed by Flaminia Brasini, Virginio Gigli, and Simone Luciani, which is, I don't know if it's all of them or if it's most of them, but that's kind of the same design team as Grand Austria Hotel and Lorenzo Il Magnifico, which are 2 6s.
Now, Sean, I don't know if you
Yeah.
know this, but I have a really deep, close personal friend named Lorenzo who, no, I'm just taking it off track again. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So 2 excellent games that are in my collection that Raquel and I do play on a semi-regular basis. Lorenzo is probably one of her favorite games. Lorenzo would probably be a top 10 game for her. Yeah. But so great design team. So very interested in this game. So let's talk about what this is. It's based on the 16th century legend of the Golem of Prague, an anthropomorphic creature that Rabbi Lowe animated from a clay statue to protect his people. In the game, players take on the role of rabbis who create and grow these powerful creatures that will be moved around the neighborhoods of Prague under the control of students. But be careful, because if a golem becomes too powerful, it will destroy everything it encounters on its way. Players can also kill their golems in order to get bonuses. That's sort of like the overview. It is this is medium to heavyweight Euro game. There's a bunch of tracks. It's action selection. So the board is basically the neighborhoods of Prague, and there's 3 kind of streets that are different colors, and you can send out your golems to move along these streets, wreaking some amount of havoc. And then you have your students, your rabbi students, kind of one pursuing each of the streets. So the farther that they move up on the track, the farther your golems can move up on the track without you having to potentially lose points or expend knowledge, which is one of the resources. So there's some interesting stuff that goes on there, and there's some manipulation of the tracks and manipulation of the students and the golems and things like that. The main mechanism of the game is its action selection, and it does that in 2 ways. First, there's your rabbi, which is your single worker for worker placement. So that's it. You just have 1 worker for worker placement. That's your rabbi. And then there's, exclusive action selection spots. The other way is it uses marbles. So kind of think like Potion Explosion, except you're not doing the whole like connect like colored marbles. They're simply dropping among 5 or 6 different action selection spots, and the number of marbles in each spot will determine the power of the action of the action that it's landed in when you take that action. Also, the marbles are different colored because there'll be bonuses for different colors. So for example, there's blue, red, and yellow marbles. Those will move up your students when you pull that marble on the particular tracks or the streets. There's some end of round things based on which marbles that you took. If you took 2 particular colors, then something else will trigger. But basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to acquire different amounts of knowledge, which are books, knowledge, and gold and clay, which you need to build golems. And you have your own player board, and it's super upgradable. There's different spots. There's like a knowledge track with these knowledge bonuses that you can upgrade. You have your golem area where you can flip over these tiles and your golems get better or cheaper or something like that. And then you build all of these mechanisms using the gold. You actually there's the gold currency, which then has to get converted to gold bars at some point. And then those gold bars will let you build these certain mechanisms that will trigger either during the income phase at the end of a round, or if you do certain things like, if you pull a red marble, you also get this. So lots of stuff going on. This is good. I think it's pretty good. I don't think it's 6 good, but it's probably 5 good. I played 2-player with Eugene. Eugene taught me the rules, did a great job. And I'm excited to play this again. I think it's a really solid game. I don't have the burning desire to own it, which is different than Grand Austria and Lorenzo, but I think it's quite good, and I definitely think it's worth checking out. I think you would enjoy this game quite a bit, Alex, because you would be able to tell a story, and you'd have fun telling that story.
at the very least a unique theme.
Yes, it's a weird theme. Yeah.
Cool. No, it actually sounds good, and I know I'm not 100% like you are with some of their designs, but I have enjoyed others. So, not a perfect track record for me, but I know they're games that you tend to enjoy from that design team.
My recollection is that you liked Grand Austria.
Yes,
especially at lower player counts, and you were able to kind of tell a story with it, is what I remember.
Yes. But there are a bunch of other games. I mean, I haven't played Lorenzo, but I didn't like Marco Polo. What else? I'm looking through the design track record. I haven't played Newton. Haven't played Council of Four. Oh, and Zolkin. Well, Zolkin. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. So, no, it sounds interesting, and obviously I would like to give it a try at some point. So maybe it's SeanCon. I don't know.
Okay. Wait, are you in? Is it official?
Oh yeah.
Or
yeah, I was gonna confirm dates with you at the end of the show, but
okay, perfect.
But yeah, no, I'm gonna book my flight here in the near future.
Okay, sweet. All right, well, that is Golem from Ludo Creations. Oh wait, hold on. I think I'm crazy. It is from Cranio Creations. Ooh, I did it from memory, and I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, you typed it out first. Too. Oh man, bummer. All right, well, Sean, you talked about one game. The game I'm going to talk about may be pretty close to the exact opposite in many ways. So, Dukes of Dice listener Randy O'Connor reached out to me via BGG and said, "Hey, I have self-published a game that I designed. It was on Kickstarter. It had a good campaign. I know Sean would not care for this game. I don't think Sean would like this game one bit, but I think you would like it a lot. And so, can I send it to you? And if I do, will you talk about it on the show?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So, Duke's listeners, if you have a design that you've self-published and want it talked about on the show, just send us a copy. But he said, "Hey, I don't know if it'll make sense for a full review, but yeah, talk about it." I was like, "Great." So I am, because I played it a lot actually in the couple of weeks since I've had this game. So this is a game called Roll-in-One, as mentioned. This is a golfing game, and Sean, it is a surprisingly accurate, while being relatively rules-light recreation of not mini golf, but full-on golf. So in Roll-in-One, you're playing golf as a variety of delightful animal critters, all of which have their own special, unique powers. You have how it's represented in this game. So you build your own holes. So you'll build holes with mixes of fairways, rough, bunkers, and water traps. Sean, have you played actual golf, by the way?
Yeah. No, I was quite good when I was younger. I had extensive lessons, and I played pretty frequently. I hated it, and I haven't played in 20 years, but yes, I used to play a ton of golf as a kid.
You are better at golf than I am, because I have not. The closest I've come is Top Golf, and I did so badly golfing left-handed, people were convinced there's no possible way I was left-handed. So, in any case, not good at golfing, have not actually done it for real. Probably need to at some point here. In any case, so yeah, you build up a hole with that various combination of things, right? Tee off from the tee box, get it in the hole. Your objective is to land it on the hex with the hole on it. You have a variety of different clubs, so not quite a driver. I think they call it a wood in the game. I don't remember the exact number of wood. I don't have the copy in front of me, but you have woods, you have irons, you have wedges, you have a putter, and those are represented by different custom dice. So D20 is your big club, D4 is your putter. And the system is really cool. So the clubs, the D20 is not a pure D20. It's not a just 1 through 20. It's a custom D20. So on half the sides, for instance, on the D20, it's the numbers 1 through 10. The other half are triangles. And what you're going to do is you set the direction of your ball, and then you start rolling the dice. And if I roll a number, I have to, if I roll another number, beat that number. So if I roll a 4 to start, I have to roll a 5 if I want the ball to advance if I roll a number. If it rolls one of the arrows or other symbols, it just moves. With an exception being if you're in trees, it stops and lands there. But otherwise, the ball's just going to continue in flight, and you might have shanked the shot, you might have hit it really well, but there's some unpredictability in terms of what is the ball going to do after I hit it. You have certain clubs that allow you to turn or curve the ball mid-flight. You have clubs that allow you to kind of chip the ball. So instead of typically a ball will roll when it lands on fairway, you have an ability where you can chip it and it'll just land flat wherever it is. If you land in water, too bad, so sad, take a penalty stroke. If you land in a bunker, your next shot, your first roll to move the ball doesn't move the ball. So it takes one roll and then another. And it's possible you'll just whack, whack, whack like you're in sand and it doesn't go anywhere. Yeah, so your objective is to land it in the hole. Now you have characters with special abilities. So one of them says, for instance, typically if I roll a 4 and then I roll another 4, the ball lands wherever it is. There's an ability that says you can count those rolls as successes. Great. There are special caddy cards, which are one-time abilities. Those are things like re-rolls, or you can do things like bet on who you think is going to win the hole, and if that player wins the hole, you get to take a stroke off of your own score. So little things like that baked into the game. Sean, this is a lot of fun. I brought this one out to Cape Cod for Memorial Day weekend and had a blast. Played I think a good 5 or 6 holes with family members. This game is relatively easy to teach. The complication comes in with some of the player powers and with the respective caddy cards, but you need those to mitigate, right? Because otherwise it's just a roll the dice, see what happens game. And it succeeds at that, but if you're a gamer, you want at least a little mitigation, a little ability to affect what the heck's going to happen here. Let's see. So really big positives, thematic, really, really well done art, and kind of adds this nice creative space of I can build my own hole in a bunch of different ways. I did one where I had 2 hole locations and you could kind of pick which one you went after, and some players went one way, some players went another. It's fast and it plays really well. If I had criticisms, it would be that some of the card interactions, some of the caddy cards, aren't crystal clear in and of themselves as to how they would, what effects they would have. And the rulebook is thin, so it doesn't have a ton of guidance on corner cases, on things that gamers are going to bring up, but maybe your typical casual player isn't. So some rules clarification could have helped, but that's really, again, more for the gamers taking this thing way too seriously. I would say if you have a golf ball on a space, the other thing, too, is sometimes it's hard to tell, is that thing landing on fairway? Is it landing on rough or whatever else? That's a comment that got made when I played this at Jamie Stegmeier's game night a little while ago. So in any case, I've brought this out quite a bit, and maybe more than I even expected to. So strong recommendation for this one. I don't know what broad availability is. I think you can order it from his website. But no, nice job, Randy. I did enjoy this, and I think it's a really cool system that got built here.
I feel like we've got the deprecation, right? Earlier, the self-deprecation. And now we have defamation, because Randy thinks that I wouldn't like this game. Nothing about what you described suggests I wouldn't like that game. Alex, do you think I would like that game? I like roll and rights. I don't
there's no
enjoy
writing.
Golfing, but
there's no writing. Look, here's what I'll say. I will bring this to Sean Con, and we will play a hole. Because playing a hole doesn't take any time at all in this game. I think the lack of mitigation, so kind of the reliance on luck, could be frustrating. And I will say, because you kind of build your own hole, it's easy to build a very hard to finish hole. The most recent hole I played was an example of that, where it was set up in such a way where the ball would keep rolling past, or it would land in a bunker and people get stuck or chip over it. And so sometimes you can have frustrating finishes to holes, but you can also have pretty remarkable stand-up kinds of moments with the dice rolling. I don't know, maybe you'd like it. But yeah, Randy's impression was it might be too light for you. I think it's too light and maybe a little too luck-driven, but perhaps because it's such a bite size of a game, you might feel differently.
But it's a roll and write.
There's no writing. There is no writing.
Oh.
No, there's no writing.
Never mind.
You have a golf ball. There's a golf ball on a physical course that you're moving as you roll the dice.
Oh, I see. Okay. I mean, I was listening, but I think I read the title in the show notes, and it just seems to suggest that it's a roll and write somehow.
Yeah. No. Go to the BGG page.
Yeah, I'm looking on it, or I'm looking at it here. Okay. Well, yeah, you can reach out to Randy on Twitter, where he appears to be active promoting Roll and One. He's at Randy0, all spelled out.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sending it, Randy. It's been a lot of fun, and yeah, cool. That's Roll and One. Over to you, Sean.
Yeah, so I got to play Pandemic. No, actually, excuse me. I got to say this all correctly.
Wow.
World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King, a pandemic system game. I got to play that 2 players the other night. And let me make a quick aside. I got to play. Did I talk about the pandemic tournament briefly? We played in, Raquel and I played in a pandemic tournament. Okay. And then Chewy was like, well, I want to play in a pandemic tournament. Let's play pandemic. So she and I played 2-player pandemic. It was a bit much for her right now. She says she enjoyed it. She says she wants to play again. She understood the actions, but she didn't, it was kind of processing like, so what do we do? Like, I understand what I can do, but what do we do? And that she wasn't quite all there for that yet. So interesting. And that was fun. But let's talk about World of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King, a pandemic system game. So this is kind of like, what was the Cthulhu one? Rise of Cthulhu, Reign of Cthulhu?
Yeah, something like that.
So it's kind of more like that. You are in the World of Warcraft. You're on the frozen continent of, I think it's Northrend, where the Lich King kind of holds sway. And you, it's cooperative. It's a pandemic type game. You and your other heroes are battling over the continent. You're trying to eliminate these undead, like these zombies or ghouls. I think they're ghouls. And so there's only one type of ghoul. So there's not like multiple diseases like in pandemic. So there's one type of ghoul that'll pop up. And then instead of having an outbreak, so when there are 3 ghouls in a spot, if you were to put a 4th one there, you don't. Instead of that outbreaking like in regular pandemic, you just add an abomination, which is a bigger, beefier dude who has 3 wounds, so harder to kill. Now, the object here, the way to win, is you need to complete 3 quests. And in each of the regions, there's 3 different regions of this continent, there are these various quest cards that require you to go to a certain quest space and then spend one of your 4 actions a turn to quest. And basically there are these 2 dice, and they have they're D6s, and they have some combination of a fist, a shield, a fist and shield, or 2 fists, and fists represent successes. And so for each success that you roll, you're going to move this tracker up, and there's, I don't know, maybe like 20 spots, 15 spots, something like that. And then you can also reveal certain cards from your hand to advance an extra spot per action. One reveal per action if you're the one doing it. Now you lose in the normal kind of pandemic way. If you can't place the ghouls out, you lose. If you have too many of these outbreaks, they're actually called overruns, I believe, you'll lose the game. Or if you go through the hero deck, you're going to lose the game. And so it's a normal game of pandemic in the sense that you're running around, you're trying to keep the ghoul count down, but you don't just remove them with an action. You have to use that combat system, the dice that I talked about before. So it's kind of the same thing where you're rolling the dice, you're looking for successes. Ghouls and abominations will punch you back if they're left there. So those shields will help you, but you also have a lot of card play. So this is different than regular pandemic where you're just sort of set collecting cards to turn them in. And maybe you're using some of them to build a research station or to fly to a certain location. But these cards are kind of designed to be used because they're fight cards, they're defense cards, they're travel cards, they're heal cards, and you can basically spend them to augment your actions in pretty significant ways. We lost. We did terrible. It was just me and Matt. But it was fun. We both liked it. I've lost, I don't know how many hours playing World of Warcraft over the years. It's been a while. It's probably been about 6 years since I last played. Not seriously, but just kind of dabbled for a couple weeks. But used to play a ton of World of Warcraft. And I enjoyed this. I thought it was pretty cool. I don't know that I'd need to own it, but I'm glad the Empire has it, and I'd certainly play this again. Alex, you've never played World of Warcraft, right?
I absolutely have.
Oh, you have?
I have.
Wow, I'm kind of surprised.
Several hundred hours invested into World of Warcraft.
How many?
I don't remember. Several hundred. Like not. Okay. I know there are people who have invested a ton of time in that, but no, I was on that for a little phase there. Didn't get as completely hooked as some people, but no, I've absolutely played original World of Warcraft. I think before any expansions came out.
Okay. What was your highest level character?
Man, I don't
You
remember. Nah, no way.
Okay.
Lost to time.
All right. I remember. I can tell you about all my characters.
I have some more familiarity with World of Warcraft as a whole, but not so much that I could tell you that particular stat.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Well, yeah, that's World of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King, a pandemic system game. And you know what, Alex? I kept meaning to tell you before we go into the next part here. Are you able to play Slay the Spire mods on your Switch?
I heard about what you're talking about, and I'm not sure it's released for that or able to be released because, yeah, I saw there's a fan created mod that creates a whole new character, a whole new mode. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's Slay the Spire Downfall. So it's a completely free fan created mod with a brand new playable character. I forget what he's called, but he's sort of like a gunslinger, like a lot of Western inspired gunslinging. And I've played probably a dozen different runs with him so far. It's really cool. So he he has this thing called Dead On. So a lot of his cards have the Dead On ability, where if they're positioned in the middle of your hand, this Dead On bonus triggers. And so there's a lot of weird manipulation. You're like, well, I need to play cards in this particular order to move this card to the middle so that its Dead On will trigger. And then of course there's powers and there's items or relics that like will enhance your Dead On. Like there's one that says, you know, your first Dead On card is always, it's called Concentrate. You're concentrated at the start of the turn, so your Dead On will work wherever it is in your hand. Or when you play a Dead On card, immediately add a new Dead On card to your hand. So very cool. I've enjoyed it. You know, a lot of times you'll play sort of fan inspired stuff or fan made stuff, and you're like, no, this seems like really balanced, really well thought out. It looks just like the rest of Slay the Spire, the card art, the art for the relics, the animations for the gunslinger. I'm having a ball. I'm having an absolute ball. And so if you're able to get that on Switch, I highly recommend it. It's well worth it.
I don't think it's available yet. My guess is it would have to be more of an official release for that to be the case. But I don't know. I'll check it out. I'll look it up.
Yeah, check it out. Worth checking out.
Okay. Well, Sean, our timing is terrible as always.
As always.
We released, I think the day after or the day of, our last episode released, I should say, when the Spiel and Kennerspiel nominees are announced. And normally we make a big deal about talking about them and what do we think. I'm going to keep this relatively brief. Sean, it is an interesting case where I have already played 4 of the 6 of the Spiel and Kennerspiel nominees. And always have to take a step back. For folks who don't know, the Spiel des Jahres and the Kennerspiel des Jahres is the German game of the year. It often drives huge amounts of sales. It's a big deal award, and it's one we've covered since really the inception of the Dukes of Dice. So we'll do a little bit here. So the Spiel nominees, Sean, were Cascadia, which we've reviewed on the show, Abby and I have anyway, Scout, and Top 10. Sean, which of those 3 have you played at this point?
The only one I've played is Scout, which I own a copy of. So Suzanne talked about it first on the show, and then you talked about it, and it sounded great. It's I love ladder climbing games, and it's awesome. It's really good. So Rory just played Cascadia, and he was like, yeah, it was really great. He's like, I wasn't expecting to like it, but he dug it a lot. So I'd like to give it a try. But Scout, I was very impressed with. Like, it's a very entry level ladder climbing game, and but still a lot going on. I liked it a lot.
If you want to know more about Cascadia, go back and listen to our review episode. Abby and I both really love that game. That game is phenomenal. Top 10 is, as best I can tell, not available in the U.S. just yet. Effectively, this is a party game where each round there's going to be a category. So Cuddliest as an example. And then you'll have cards in hand, kind of apples to apples style, but you'll also have a secret. I need to get an answer that ranks about second in this category versus 10th in this category. And so you're trying to play cards that get closer to that or further away from that, depending. And then the person separate from that will judge. Looks like a fun party game. Again, as best I can tell, not available in the U.S. just yet, but very, very, very light. So those are the 3 nominees. Scout is really solid. For me, my favorite of the 2 that I've played of these 3 would be Cascadia. It's hard to tell who the true favorite is in this one. I don't think any of these 3 are prohibitive favorites like you see in some years. But, a solid group for sure. Kennerspiel nominees, Sean, were Cryptid, deduction game, Cryptid. Dune Imperium, which I gave a 6 to. I think that game is amazing and have just played it again recently. And a game called Living Forest, which I had absolutely no familiarity with, from Ludonaut. Sean, of these 3 games, have you played any of them? I know you played Dune Imperium.
I've played Cryptid and Dune Imperium. And
okay.
I've come to find, after playing Cryptid, that I'm really not a deduction fan. I thought I would be. I grew up playing Clue. I really like Clue, but I don't really care for deduction games anymore. But yeah, Dune Imperium, again, knowing nothing about Living Forest like you, I'm kind of inclined to think that Dune Imperium might win. I'd like it to win.
Sometimes when you're the most complex in the category, and by looking at least BGG weight rating, it's the most complex, it doesn't always make you more likely to win the award. So I'm not sold that it's the prohibitive favorite necessarily, especially having very limited knowledge of Living Forest. So I'm hesitant to go that far, but I'm certainly rooting for it. Cryptid in my book, Sean. I know there are some people who absolutely love this. Dan King, the Game Boy Geek, is a huge deduction fan, a huge fan of Cryptid. I am not. I am not a fan of these kinds of pure deduction games. It just kind of falls flat for me as a game. I've played it, so I know that from experience. I don't know why I said that in such a weird way. Anyway, Cryptid, not a fan. If you like pure deduction games, you'll like it. My support is behind Dune Imperium. Again, not knowing much about Living Forest. So, that's a very kind of quick breakdown of this. I think a decent crop of nominees. I don't know if you have anything that's sort of an all-timer game like a Codenames or things along those lines. Although, I have seen a warm reception for Cascadia. In fact, I had my copy of it was loaned out to a friend I play hockey with here in St. Louis, and he had it for, I think, 3 months and played it with several groups, and several of those folks bought it off of those plays. So, pretty well-loved game, Cascadia, and certainly I'm in that camp as well. So yeah, Cascadia and Dune Imperium would be my favorites of the ones I've played. But who knows how that award's going to ultimately shake out. Well, that will do it for our discussion of what we've played, and I guess an awards discussion. After the break, our review of Reload.
Well, Alex, it appears that the Game Toppers 3.5 Kickstarter has come and gone, raising almost $300,000. Whew, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of cheese.
Now, Sean, you said it appears. Are you indicating that this is perhaps an illusion and there's a secret Kickstarter campaign going on at the same time while the main campaign appears to have ended? There's a parallel reality where the...
It's over.
It's over.
Okay,
sorry.
It's just done. It's done. And if you want to get, some of the stuff from the Kickstarter, I guess you're kind of out of luck.
Yeah, unless there was some sort of alternative reality where perhaps those who weren't on time, they weren't early either. They're not early. They're not on time. There's they've come to this. What's the word I'm looking for? They want to pledge.
If only you could have a tardy pledge. You can make a tardy pledge.
Yeah, a tardy play. Yeah, that's sort of what I'm looking for, but it's not quite. So it's again, you wanted to pledge early, but you didn't. You want to pledge on time, but you didn't. So there's a third state there. Well, anyway, that state I think is actually open. Oh, it's open. Oh, late pledges. Late pledges are open,
Oh,
Sean.
that's the word. Yeah, so if you want to get the new Mycroft or the new Moriarty, if you want to get leg kits, if you want to get some awesome new playmats, some with art by Vincent Dutrait, then you can go over to Kickstarter. You can look up the Game Toppers 3.5. There's this big blue late pledge button. If you're on a phone, you push it with your thumb. If you're on a computer, you click it with your mouse, unless it's your touch screen. And I guess you could, usually with a touch screen, you're not using a thumb, it's usually your index finger.
Use a thumb if you want to. I'm not judging. Yeah, look, I'm not judging what finger you want to use to press the button. Just, press the button.
Now, it does say late pledge starting June 2nd. That's come and gone for a limited time. So I would hurry. And I believe we're looking still at kind of a quick fulfillment here. So I would definitely do this sooner rather than later. These are very high quality tabletoppers. I play on them all the time. Alex, you've got one in your home. These are fantastic. Can't recommend them highly enough. So definitely go check it out on the Kickstarter or go check out GameToppersLLC.com.
Remember, if it's not a showstopper, it's not a game topper. It's a concept that started off with a movie, a very graphic movie back in 2000 about a bunch of high school students fighting to the death. It then turned into one of the world's most popular video games of all time, and also a book series inspired off of the concept. Yes, we're talking about the Battle Royale genre, and we're talking about a game squarely within it. A game called Reload that sort of blends Fortnite and Hunger Games in different ways. Does it do so successfully, or is this Battle Royale a complete flop? We're talking about Reload.
So Reload is a 2022 title from Kolossal Games. It's designed by Francois Rouzet, Jean-Marc Tribbett, with art by Chris Beyer, and maybe it's just Jackie Davis, or maybe it's Chucky Davis. I don't know. So yeah, as Alex stated, this is a sort of battle royale type game. Here's the description. In the near future, the mega corporations of the military industrial complex have invested trillions developing cybernetically enhanced clone soldiers for off-world exploration, seeking to build robust teams for future missions and, more importantly, to land lucrative government contracts. They have created special training islands. On these islands, they are able to simulate all of the deadly conditions their soldiers may face on remote planets. To fund these expensive programs and the military-grade innovations built into their test subjects, the arms manufacturers have teamed up with media moguls to create and promote broadcast competitions live from the island's training grounds. Thus was born Reload, the biggest TV show on the planet with the most charismatic and capable subjects competing in front of millions of avid viewers to win fame for themselves and fortunes for their creators. In Reload, you get to engage in this battle royale experience thanks to an innovative action dice system that offers fast-paced play and the freedom to explore the island while fighting for fame. So yeah, that's what this is. This game can be played in a couple different modes. It can be played in team mode, or it can be played in battle royale mode, where it's everyone for themselves. There is a island that's in the center of the table that's made up of a bunch of different hexes. Different hexes are different spaces that your character will move between. They offer some sort of defensive bonus, or there might be a mountain that's harder to kind of climb up, or they might have certain facilities that you can interact with that will give you some sort of bonus throughout the game. So here's how the game starts. You pick your person, your fighter, your soldier, whatever, your clone, and they're going to parachute onto the island. So this is kind of like Fortnite. That's how Fortnite starts. That's how the Battle Royale Call of Duty starts. So you parachute in, you pick a particular hex, either the center hex or the hexes surrounding the center hex. And then there is a very convoluted, hard to understand, which we'll talk about in a second, dice roll that will determine if you land on target or if you drift in some way. And then your turn starts. So let's talk about what you as the player have. So you have sort of a player console. And on this console, there's spaces for wounds. You can take, or injuries. You can take 4 injuries before you're forced to reload. You're going to keep some tokens. You have some traps. You have some walls that you can build. You have your hideout all there on your mat. And then you have 5 dice. And on the left side of the board, there's a spot for those dice. It's the defense pool. But then you have your available actions that are above it. There is the move action. There is the interact action, the loot action, the build action, the heal action, and the close combat action. And what you're going to do is you're going to take these dice and you're going to assign them to the open spots for these actions. So for example, there are 3 open spots for the move action, which means that you can move 3 times during your turn. Now, you're not rolling these dice. In fact, what you're doing is you're choosing a die from your defense pool. Well, not really choosing. You take any die. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the die says, because you're going to change the face of it to match the predetermined face on the board. So like the first move is a 4. So when you move, you'll take a die, set it to the 4, place it there, and now you're able to move your character 1 hex. If you want to move again, it's going to require a 3. So you take any of the dice, set it to a 3, and so on. So you can do all this, and once you're done with your turn, and I'm going to come back and explain the rest of the actions, but once you're done with the turn, all of the dice are going to slide off to your battle line, I think it's called, or your battle row, and they are going to be in descending order. So highest at top, lowest at bottom. And this is going to be your sort of your defensive capabilities. Your offensive capabilities if you're ending the turn with a close combat, or your defensive capabilities otherwise, because the higher the die, the better. And there's a corresponding, basically the power of the action might make it a lower value die, so you're more vulnerable in combat. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about these actions. So there is the interact action, and this is basically saying if you are in a hex that has this symbol on it, it's going to let you do something. It might let you draw some equipment cards and then discard cards. There's all of these special different hexes. Like there's one that says you can place a trap or a loot icon, an equipment icon on any other hex on the board. It's like I forget what it's called. So that's the interact icon. There's also the loot icon, and the loot action. The loot action lets you pick up something that's in a hex. So very often this will be these equipment markers. So there are 3 decks of equipment. There's 1-star, 2-star, 3-star. Initially, you'll only have access to probably the 1 and the 2 stars. And of course, they're better the more stars they have. One of the other things you might be able to pick up are fame tokens. So let's talk about these fame tokens. Specifically, these are the beacon tokens. The way that you're going to win this game is by having the most fame. So you don't keep track of that with points. There's no victory points. Instead, you have these various tokens of varying length that you're going to put in this fame board tracker. They're going to kind of slide in next to one another. And so these beacons are pretty decent. They're not the shortest, but they're not the longest. And you're able to collect these, and you're going to keep running around the board. And eventually you'll have to go to the center hex. You'll have to use the activate action there. And then you can drop off all of the beacon tokens that you've collected. And now they get added to your tray. However, if you get reloaded, if you get killed before you do that, all of your beacons are going to drop in that spot. So that's something you gotta watch out for. All right. So that is the loot action. The build action is going to let you build either walls, traps, or your hideout. Walls, you can place up to 2 at a time. You only have 3 in your pool, though. Walls can be placed on edges of the hex that you're in. You can shoot through them. You can draw a line of sight through them if they're yours, but you can't if they're someone else's. You can also move through them if they're yours, but you can't if they're someone else's. The hideout gives you a little bit of dice manipulation at the end of your turn. It also protects you from the contagion because there are some event cards that happen that will have these contagion markers kind of surround the island and move in, kind of like in Fortnite. And that offers you some level of protection. And then there's also traps. You have 6 traps, 2 paper, 2 rock, and 2 scissors. And when you place these out, if an opponent moves into a hex where you have a trap, they have to say rock, paper, or scissors. If what they choose matches the trap, you flip it over. If what they say beats what you laid the trap with, then they've disarmed the trap and they're going to get a little fame token for disarming the trap. If they say the same symbol, the trap goes away, but nothing happens. If they get beat by the trap, so they say scissors and the trap is rock, then the trap is sprung, they're injured, and then the player who had the trap gets the little fame token. So that's pretty interesting. What's
Small
that?
clarification. On a
Yes.
tie, you also get the fame token. You just don't injure them.
Oh, shoot. Well, that's a bummer. That's something I missed. Okay. And that's probably my fault. That's definitely my fault. Okay, good to know. I don't think that wouldn't have really affected. I think we had one time where there was a equal trap and it wouldn't have affected the game. All right, good. Okay. So that's the build option. Then you have the heal option. And with the heal option, you're going to take the die that you use, you're going to roll it. If it's a 1 through 5, you heal 1 wound. And basically, your dice are your injuries. So anytime you're injured, your dice, one of your dice is moving over to the injury area, and that means you have less actions from there on out. So healing's important. So you're going to get a dice back when you heal, and it's immediately can be used. However, if you roll a skull, which is kind of the 6, if you roll a skull, you'll actually get 2 dice back, which is pretty nice. All right. Finally, there is the close combat, but I'm going to talk about ranged combat. You only get the ranged combat action if you have looted some weapons that are guns that are, ranged combat. So these ranged combat cards, these weapons, these guns are going to have a certain number of dice spots where you're going to place your actions. And then they're going to tell you roll a certain number of white ranged dice. And then they're going to say, this is the range of your weapon, and these are some effects or a bonus that might happen. Okay, so this is probably the hardest to visualize here. It's much easier when you have it in front of you. And it was a little bit difficult to understand this at first, but once you got it, I think you got it. All right, so here's how this works. So I'm going to roll, as the attacker, I'm going to roll my 3 white ranged dice for this machine gun. I roll them. Great. First, I check, are there any skulls? If there are any skulls, I pull them to the side. If my target has any dice available in their defense pool, which if they do, it's usually maybe 1, usually 0, they're going to roll it. They're going to check to see if it's a skull. If it's a skull and I have a skull, those skulls cancel out. But if I have more skulls as the attacker than they do, they're going to get an immediate injury. One of their dice moves over. All right. Now, any remaining ranged dice that are not skulls, I'm going to arrange them from highest to lowest, and I'm going to compare them to the defender's battle line of dice. So let's say I roll 5, 2. All right. Then Alex, I'm shooting at your character. You have 4, 3 as your top 2 dice. So my 5 beats your 4. So I've injured you. That 4 goes over to your injure pool. And then we check the next dice down. My 3, or I forget what I said, but let's say it's my 2 to your 3. I don't beat you. Nothing happens. I don't get injured back because I'm shooting at you. It's not close combat. So I've done, let's say I did 1 injury through the skull, and then I did 1 injury through the dice comparison. That's my range shot. I then check a bonus. So if any of the dice that I did roll match the action dice that are already placed on the shooting card, there might be some bonus. Some of the better weapons will give a bonus of, hey, just cause another injury. There's also small injuries or light injuries that takes the bottommost die on the player's battle line and reduces it by 1. So if it's a 3, it becomes a 2. If it's already a 1, then it actually becomes a full injury, which is pretty interesting. But of course, there's equipment. There's things like helmets and vests that can reduce some of these effects. So that's range combat. Close combat is very similar. Close combat, if you're going to do it, it has to be the last action that you do. Again, you're going to roll the die that you used for the close combat action and set it aside. Might be a skull, might not. And then you're simply going to compare dice for dice against the target. And I can injure you, you can injure me based on the die roll, because now we're in the same hex and we're duking it out. Hey, duking it out. So that's how close combat works. You are going to get a fame marker if you manage to injure people. You also get a giant one if you manage to reload them, if you manage to kill them. Now, when you're reloaded, you lose all your equipment. The equipment does not drop on the hex like you would kind of expect it to. and then you're going to parachute back on the island on your next turn, and you get 2 level 2 equipment, keep one, discard the other to start your new island adventure. There are some event cards I mentioned before that happen at the end of each player's turn. This might be the Contagion. This might be new supply drops coming in that you're going to have to go, scramble to go get. There's also these achievements. You can get achievement fame tokens. Some of them are just be the first person to get 2 trap tokens. Others are who has the most of these at the end of the game. Now, the game's going to end once you've gone through the predetermined number of event cards, and it varies for player number. And then you check the end game fame tokens, and whoever has progressed the most is going to be the winner. Otherwise, if you just reach a certain point at some point during the game, you or your team wins automatically. Well, that's Reload. Alex, did you have any expectations, any buzz, anything you knew about this game going in?
I had not heard about the game itself. The game itself had a massive Kickstarter campaign, and for the record for this, we're talking about, and at least in my case, I'm talking about the retail version. I think yours was the retail version as well, Sean.
Correct.
Yep. So had not heard word one about this game. This is so to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit. Sometimes at the end of a show, when we don't have another review lined up, Sean and I will just stare at the miniature market page until something jumps out as, oh, this looks like it might be interesting enough. This is absolutely the case of this game. So had not heard about it until we did that browsing.
Just to interrupt, it's not just that, right? It's also, is it something that Empire has readily available?
That's true. Yes. Yeah. Also another factor in this. So this one happened to check both of those boxes, right? That always helps. Sean, I am familiar with a lot of the source material this draws from, having seen, I referenced in the intro there, the Japanese film Battle Royale, read and seen the Hunger Games movies, have played Fortnite. There's a lot of source material inspiration here. I am not candidly the biggest Fortnite fan. I've played a couple of rounds maybe and been like, okay, well, I guess I can hide for a while and then I'll die in, the last 2 or whatever else. But I'm not actually good and I'm not actually doing anything in this game. So not one that ever hooked me. Have you ever played Fortnite, Sean?
Oh, a ton. Yeah. Chewy loves Fortnite. Like loves Fortnite. And I remember it was probably about 2 years ago, we played in a team scenario and we won like 40 player things. We won 3 matches in a row. And I was like, cause I'm not that good. She's not that. I mean, she was like 6 at the time. She's not that good. I don't know what it was. Like it was kind of fun because I was like kind of teaching her like, okay, here, we got to watch each other's backs. We got you got to use cover. It was interesting. I love Fortnite. I mean, let me rephrase that. I enjoy Fortnite quite a bit. I love first person shooters. I'm not as crazy about Battle Royale. That whole,
okay.
Even the Call of Duty Battle Royale, I prefer kind of the old Call of Duty team deathmatch type thing. But I like Fortnite quite a bit. Chewy loves Fortnite. I mean, she's got Fortnite clothes. She's got Fortnite toys. She loves Fortnite.
So thematically, I had a lot of familiarity, but not necessarily a lot of affinity, if that makes sense. I think I'm more like the Hunger Games side of where this draws from going in. So those were expectations going in. I had not heard of the game, but thematically, I had some resonance with it. What about you? Anything beyond what you just said?
Yeah, similar to what you just said. I've seen Battle Royale. I've seen and read the Hunger Games. I can't believe I read them. But when I saw this game, my first thought was like, I will never touch this game. I have zero interest in playing this game. Not even wouldn't even give it a second thought, and I'm ready to move on. That was my anticipation. And the games that we were looking at, I think we narrowed it down to 3. And one of them, I won't say which, but one of them, I'm like, oh, it's a family weight cooperative game. You're like, next. I'm like, wait, what? Since when do you not like family weight cooperative games? What's going on here? That should be my objection. But we sort of defaulted to this. And I was like, okay. I did bring Empire's copy home with me because that's what it was. I was like, well, maybe I can play this with Chewy because I think she would be excited about it. And then she flaked out on me, and I wound up playing it with Raquel for my first 2 games. And then I took it to Empire and played a 3-player game, or excuse me, a 4-player game, 4-player team game, and then another 2-player game. And after all of that, there's no way Chewie could have played this game. Just no way. It's too complex.
Are you kidding me? Yeah, no way.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's how we got to where we're at. So where are we, Alex?
Well, we're now on rules, the rules section of this review. And I think this is a case, Sean, where a key difference in how we're going to assess our enjoyment of this game is in how quickly we were able to internalize the combat system at the core of this.
Okay. Yeah, huge factor.
Huge factor, because the rulebook devotes a lot of space and a lot of time to trying to lay out, this is how combat works. This is how combat at a distance works. This is how close combat works. Sean, I read through it a couple of times, and I still didn't grok it. And I eventually got a hang of it, but it took some time, and it took some effort. This was not intuitive for me to understand, to explain. That's not to say it's a bad system, but it was not an easy system for me, if that makes a degree of sense. I can imagine it being much easier for you because you're used to these kinds of systems in games, in the kinds of games you love.
Yeah. It was not an easy system to grasp for a lot of the people that played the game initially. I struggled very briefly with it. It did make sense to me, but I absolutely get how it's not intuitive. And eventually, I mean, I could look at my board and look at your board, or look at my dice, my range dice rolls, look at your dice, your board, and I didn't need to like set things up anymore. I could just be like, oh, okay, boom, 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 here's what happened. And for some people, it's like, wait, you got to walk me through that. Explain to me what just happened. There's also like some corner cases when, so there's a injury hierarchy. They devote a little paragraph to injury hierarchy, where if it's like a non-combat injury, because basically if it's a combat injury, you're removing the dice that gets beat. So like if my 5 beats your 4, and your 4 is at the top, your whole battle line is now weaker for subsequent attacks, because there are some weapons you can use multiple times in a turn. Whereas if you just sustain a random injury in the middle of the game, like if like a trap is set, or if I throw a grenade as a free action and that injures, well, that's a little different. Trap is set, let's say. Then typically that comes from your bottommost dice on your battle line, right? So it's not so devastating that it takes one of your better dice. So then you have to know that, but it's like, well, wait, what if I don't have any battle line dice? Well, then where does it come from? And then I think it's, then it comes from your defense pool. And then if you don't have anything in your defense pool, then it comes to one of your assigned dice. And, so there's some work to internalize all of that. I will say that this combat system is brilliant. I think it is very elegant and very fast once you understand it. But yeah, there is going to be some overhead there to get to that point.
There was also some questions for me that emerged around timing of injuries. When does an injury get inflicted in the cycle? And it might have been addressed in the rules. I scanned and I could not find it. Because we had a couple of examples where, say, a weapon had an injury effect on it, or a small injury effect or something like that.
Yeah.
Does a small injury, does that happen at the beginning of combat? Does it happen after stuff's result? Like, when does that happen in the cycle? So
it spells that out. That's part of the bonus step. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's there were instances like that where it was unclear and we just had to kind of make calls. I had a hard time finding stuff and pulling stuff out of the rule book when I needed to. There's some great player aids that break down different abilities and effects and what icons do and when. But again, the plays I had of this were clunky in a lot of cases. Even after the first go round, this did not quite internalize as well rules wise as I would have liked. And so they have colorful examples. The rulebook is decently laid out, but I still found a decent amount of confusion in it. It worked out. It came together, but it took longer than I would have liked.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you have any other rules, things, issues?
Yeah, probably my biggest complaint was the parachuting in and how that drift works. So basically what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to roll 2 dice. And if the dice match, if you roll a 4 and a 4, you land on target. Or if the dice are opposite, when I say opposite, there are 6 regions, 6 directions, and also 6 zones. And so and I forget which numbers are opposite, but if you roll those opposite numbers, you're also on target. If you roll any other 2 numbers, then you need to drift your character 1 space towards one of those numbered regions of your choice. That's how it works. It took a while for me to understand that, and it felt like you could have read the rule in a couple different ways. But I looked online, and so that to me and there was no example for that. There's examples for everything else, but there was no example for that because they're like, oh, we nailed it. We nailed this rule. No one's ever going to have a question about this. And I'm like, well, excuse me. I'm an attorney. I could parse this in 3 different ways here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a little frustrating. The differences for a team game, let me rephrase that. Not the differences for a team game, but there are additional fame points that you can earn in a team game. And I don't recall there being one spot that just says, here are all the ways that you can earn these teamwork fame points. Instead, they were sprinkled throughout. Very, very well blocked off. And so it's easy for me to flip through and be like, that's one, boom, boom, boom. That's one, boom, boom, boom. That's one. But it would have been nice if they were all in one section. I like when rulebooks say, here is how the game is different for this mode, all summed up, not kind of sprinkled throughout.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. I noticed this as well. Sean, there was one other thing where some of the cards, the event cards, will reference zones, and it's sort of clear what a zone is. I don't know if it's actually laid out in the rule book, but you notice.
It is.
Is it? Okay, well, I missed that. I missed a lot of stuff, Sean, is more the underlying point I'll throw out there. But yeah, I didn't know exactly what a zone was, and you could kind of figure it out. Oh, it's these 4, and this kind of overlaps with a different zone, and this zone overlaps with this other zone. So you could figure it out, but it wasn't. It might have been there, but it wasn't intuitive. I didn't find it intuitive for me.
Yeah, I mean, it did lay it out. It said, the zone is defined as the outermost hex that's adjacent to the zone marker on the edge of the map, and then the 3 adjacent hexes to that outermost hex.
This is why I shouldn't teach games for the first time. Although I'll note, you mentioned the trap rule being off, so it's not just me with that stuff. So, any case, rules, to sum up in my thoughts, there were some problems for me. Some problems in how information was organized, how easy it was to get into my brain. I think there's some really interesting systems within the game, but it didn't come together perfectly, and I found myself flipping through the rulebook more than I wanted to be while playing this game.
Mm-hmm.
So, art and components. Sean, you had Empire's copy, so you may not have even seen this bag. What shape were the miniatures in for Empire's copy?
Oh, they were in bad shape. They were falling over. They were okay. This is one of my biggest complaints about this game is the minis are awful.
Yep.
They're just awful. It's 2022. It's, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I am blown away by what's out there in terms of miniatures. Like there are Patreons now, like where you basically, you're a monthly Patreon patron and they send you the STL files for 3D printing at home. Right. And they're amazing. They rival Games Workshop and they rival, some of the best miniatures companies out there. There's just this is just the heyday for miniatures, and these are not good, and the quality of the plastic's not good. And I'm just like, this was a big miss. I would have been 100% fine with standees. 100% fine. I have no issues with standees. But if you're going to do miniatures, do them right.
So, Sean, I'm not a miniature snob. This is not my area of expertise. I have played some more games with miniatures, and I have still unpainted a whole bunch of Blood Bowl miniatures that I assembled. So I've gotten more into the miniature side of things, but I wouldn't consider myself a miniature snob.
Yeah.
When I opened this game, they came in a little bag that said, "Hey, to avoid breakage and cut down on replacement costs, we've used a more flexible plastic. Just run them underwater and they'll stand right up." Even if I did that, and to be clear, these were like on their side, not broken, but just bent.
Yeah.
So, especially the running one was laying flat just about. Even if I ran it under hot water to straighten them out, they lack any kind of really good detail. For the most part, they are the bottom of the barrel as miniatures go. These are not good miniatures, at least in the retail edition. Maybe Kickstarter folks got something better. I doubt it. This was a big miss components-wise. I 100% agree with you, Sean. I noticed it immediately, and yeah, standees would have worked just fine and actually probably been better for this game. Probably would have been cheaper for them to make, too. So I get why you want minis, but yeah, you're right. If you're going to do them right. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Other components, how did you feel about the rest of how this game came out production-wise?
So here's my other gripe. My other gripe is it needs it needed a like a water edge thing like Catan has, like the newer editions of Catan have, so that there's no moving and jostling of the hexes, and then also that has your zone numbers with it. And I don't remember. I mean, there may be. Let's keep this in mind. So the retail box has 4 characters and it plays up to 4 players. There are expansions that came out through Kickstarter that raise the number of playable characters up to 12 and allows you to play 6 players, up to 6 players. I don't know if there are bigger maps and they didn't want to do that, but if most of the time, if you're going to be playing 4 or less and you're going to be on a normal size map, it would have been nice to have those sort of island, water edge tiles. Whatever. It's a little gripe. It's not huge. Other than that, I think good card quality. It has sort of like Fortnite looking art, and I think that works for it. The component quality on the hexes is good. The player boards they're just the mat. They're the thin mat. That's fine. That's typical. Something like a really nice chunky inset for the dice, that might be kind of nice, but I understand. That's not a ding against the game. But what I will say, and this is kind of stupid. I was in love with the Fame tracker. I thought like that is an inset thing, right? So it's basically multi-part. So if you're playing like a battle royale, you get the little starter piece, you get the end piece, and then you get 2 normal pieces that go in between. And then if it's battle royale, I think it's the start, the end, and like 4. And they're like puzzle piece kind of when they lock together, but it's chunky. Like you can lock them together and you can pick the whole thing up because they interlock that well. And again, it's a recessed board. It's a 2-part board. I don't know what it is. I loved it. I thought it was great. I liked the idea of not keeping score, so to speak, just like the visuals of you're adding to this bar, right? This bar is getting longer and longer. I thought it was a great component. I really dug it.
We'll talk more in gameplay, but not just a great component, but a great gameplay choice. I think one of my favorite things of the game is that system, that scoring system baked into it. Sean, I'll note you mentioned the having a water's edge or something to kind of contain things. Yeah, if you look on the Kickstarter, there are maps that don't conform to that standard size. There are maps that are larger, that are capture the flag maps, that are in different shapes. So while possible, I can understand them wanting to have the flexibility. I did have a similar issue to what you described where I, bumped the board and some of the things got jostled, the wall moved and this moved and this didn't quite line up. And not my favorite thing, but ultimately not that big of a deal in my
Agreed.
mind.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I agree with you on components. I don't think a multi-layered player board is really necessary. You don't lose a ton of information from stuff getting
No, I
bumped
know.
or whatever
Yeah.
else. But it just, yeah, it's always nice as a premium component. But for what it needed to be, I think it accomplishes it well. The tiles are clear. The tiles have good iconography in my mind. Okay, so I'll note this on the insert, Sean. The insert has a lot of these little recessed tubs set out. And it looks like there's enough for just about all of the things, right? You can put one character in each of the 4 ones on the end, and then there's areas where you can add tokens in different groupings. Because you need to grab tokens from time to time. Hey, an airdrop came. Hey, there's a supply crate over here. Hey, there's this. Hey, there's that. There weren't enough of those little tubs in my mind. Like, you sort of had to do some grouping. So when you punch the game for the first time, you're inclined to try and put everything in its own separate little thing, and there aren't enough of those little tubs. You can figure out some of what's shared and some of what can go where, especially after a first play, but a good insert and not a perfect insert, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I never saw the insert because Empire's copy
interesting.
is just bagged up.
Okay. Got it. Okay, fair enough. Not a huge deal, but it does have a lot of disparate bits to try and keep track of. So, okay, that is art and components. Gameplay, Sean. And Sean, you talked a lot about finding the dice system in this, which is really at the core. Brilliant. What is it about this system that really shines for you?
So I like the idea that it okay. Let me come back to that. So this captures the feel of Fortnite, where you parachute in and you've got nothing, right? You've got your pickaxe and that's it. So you have to spend the first couple minutes scrambling, looking for loot, hoping you get, good weapons, good equipment, whatever. And then you're like, okay, I feel pretty good. In fact, I remember I'm like screaming at Chewie. I'm like, Chewie, you just have a pistol. Go find something else. And so then, you do that. That happens in this game, right? You're going to get loot and you're usually drawing 2 cards and keeping 1. There are these villages where you can draw, you draw 3 1-star cards and discard 1. And the green 1-star cards are kind of like grenades, or they're very simple equipment. There's some like a bow and arrow. There's very little actual weapons in the green cards. But anyway, it's this idea of you got to scramble to get equipped, and then you got to get the jump on the other players. And you don't want to start shooting at someone until you're in good effective range of your weapon. Otherwise, it kind of pings you, and then now they know where you are, right? And so I like this idea of you got to be sneaky. This type of game, you've got to use cover to your advantage. Like if you see someone, it's like, okay, I want to approach them, but without them seeing me, right? And that's now going back to the dice. That's what this game does, right? So you got to move. You can move 3 times, and your first move is a 4. That's a pretty solid dice that you're going to have in your battle line. I'm pretty happy with that. Now I want to move again. Well, now it's a 3. That's not as good as that first 4. And that kind of represents that I'm not making as much use of cover as I need to be. And I'm just kind of just sprinting at it. And then the last die, if I want to use a 3rd run action, well, that's a 2. Okay. So now I'm basically saying I'm a little bit more exposed than I would have been otherwise. Same with the loot actions. Loot actions are probably some of the most powerful things, because that's where you're getting the new equipment. That's where you're picking up the beacons. And the loots, I think there's 2 loot actions. I think it's 2 and 1, if I'm not mistaken. So you're basically, it's this idea of you're hunched over this crate and you're focused on going through the crate, figuring out what you're getting, what you're keeping. And your head's on a swivel. You're not as focused on what's around you. And so you're more vulnerable. I think that's brilliant. I think that's just brilliant. And so you'll have turns where you will, you'll say, you know what, I'm really low on health. I'd really like to loot these things, but if I do, I'm going to have some really low dice. So instead, I'm going to take these other higher value actions, or maybe I'm even not going to take actions, and I'm going to leave dice in my defense pool, because when they're in my defense pool, once I'm attacked, I'm going to roll them. They might be skulls, or I might roll a 4 or 5. That's better than having something locked in as a 1 or a 2, right? I may roll a 1 or a 2, sure, but I've got the chance to roll something better. So maybe I'm going to do that. And that's an interesting tactical decision that you have to make. And so now you're hearing me talk about this. I think it's clear I really enjoyed this game. I did not expect to like this game at all. And I think we're going to have very different experiences, because if you're kind of having a bad experience with the rules and everything's not really grokking and there's all these rules questions throughout, I could see how this would be kind of a bad experience. But after my first game with Raquel was really like the learning game, and she's not crazy about the game. She enjoyed it well enough. It's not something that she's going to really want to play. The second game was where everything really, really clicked for me. And then my third and fourth games were really good. Let me end it there for now. I'll end it there for now. What are your thoughts, Alex?
Okay. I mean, I'll start with a positive, which is the fame system in this game, the scoring system, which says your victory condition in this game is literally multiple paths to victory, and we're going to lay out the story of how you achieve those over the course of the game, right? So I can see the moment I injured your character and sent them limping away. I can see the moment I finished off your character over in a corner. It's laid out on the board. I can see where I picked up all of these fame beacons and then brought them back and basked in the glory of that. I can see where I accomplished this goal that I'd set out to do. That fame board tells the story of the game in a really compelling way, and gives a great visual representation of who's winning and why. And it provides a great game end condition that says, if someone's really running away with this, it's over fast. It can end in an immediate way. It doesn't have to last a certain number of rounds. So I think it does a lot of really cool things at the core of it. The trap system, I love that little rock, paper, scissors mechanic.
Yeah.
gives you 2 out of 3 odds that you'll get something positive out of it. 1 out of 3 that you get something really positive, and 1 out of 3 you give your opponent a slight advantage. They kind of outsmarted you. But there's some cool thought process of, all right, what do I put here? What do I put there? They saw I had rock last time. Do I go that route again? Trying to push my luck, or do I go? I don't know. It's a neat little mini mechanic built into the core of the game. I like the variety of tiles. I like that there's different maps you can build that have different effects. So I think some of how that's handled is really great. The event deck, adding contamination and kind of squeezing the map in, comes into play really well. So there's a lot that this game does that's great. If you don't love, though, the combat system, if you don't love that close combat and distance combat and don't grok it, it's going to severely hamper your enjoyment of this game, because so much of it is around that, as well it should be. But I had so many questions and corner cases and what does this equipment do, and trying to just understand and unpack the game, that it got in the way of a lot of the other parts of it that I like. So those are my thoughts, basically. I've already talked about how I find that combat system maybe more clunky than I would like, even though you would describe it probably relative to some other ones as elegant. I don't know.
Yeah. And it really, like I said, it came down to just being able to recognize immediately what the results are. And that helped. So my last 2-player game with Matt, so we had played a 4-player team game, and then Matt and I played a 2-player game. We played that game in about 35 minutes. It was that quick. In fact, we would argue that it was too quick. We both, so in a 2-player game, there are, I believe, 16 rounds, 16 event cards. And so that's 8 player turns per player, basically. And we were both like, we could have had this go a little bit longer. It would have been fine. Like it almost felt like it ended a little bit early, which was an interesting issue. Here's one of my Mm, one of my complaints about gameplay, and this is probably my only complaint about gameplay, other than maybe the game could go longer, which is a weird thing. Like very rarely is that said. Very,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
rarely. That's kind of a good sign in a sense. And I don't think there's anything keeping us from saying, okay, let's add 4 more or 8 more event cards, because there are enough event cards, because you have to discard a certain number before the game starts. So you're not guaranteed to see every event card. But one thing that was interesting with the events in our 4-player team game is that we had very few, almost no supply drops or other types of drops to seed the board early on with a bunch of equipment. So we spent almost, more than the first half. Yeah, more than the first half of the game with poor equipment. And it just felt like we were shooting each other with Nerf guns. Like some of us had vests and helmets and then bad weapons. And there was no like, oh, maybe I caused an injury and then they heal. We had no reloads until the very end of the game, once we finally got some equipment drops. And so that was a little annoying, because you need the stuff. You need the equipment. And I don't know if that means, and by the way, there are 2 supply drop cards that always go in. And then there's the third one. And this is how I read it. I read it that it's a potential to be added to the rest. I never took out the third supply card. On purpose.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
I did take it out, but I could see what you're saying, that hey, there's a chance that there's more stuff out there. Yeah.
Right. And it wasn't clear. I think that's what was meant, but it's just that you are guaranteed 2 supply drops, and maybe there's a chance of a third. And so I don't know if you need, there's a lot of games with events that don't have a tiered system of events. And I tend to find that as a mistake. Not just here, but there's a bunch of other games, like Dune Imperium, the event cards are tiered, right? Which makes sense. I think it makes some amount of sense to say, okay, we want to have a somewhat uniform experience with some variation, with some randomness, but we don't want a situation where there are no events that drop supplies onto the island for the first half of a game, because it made for a boring game. It was a bad experience so I played with Matthew, Matt, and Chris, and it wasn't great for them. And the whole time I was kind of apologizing, like, guys, this is a really good game. It's kind of boring right now because we're not getting those supply drops. Matt was willing to play another 2-player game with me. He's like, yeah, I could see what, there's some good stuff here. And then our next game was good. We had early supply drops, and we got some good weapons, and we had some fun. So, and I always hate to be the guy that's like, all right, I've played this game 4 times now, let me tell you how to fix it all. But if, I wouldn't mind seeing it longer, and I wouldn't mind having some sort of tiered system. Those are things that I could do when I set up the game. I could say, hey, these are the cards that are going to go into the top, the top 4 cards maybe, or there's 1 supply drop in the top 4. I don't know.
I think that's a reasonable adjustment to make. I don't think that would break things, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, obviously this was play tested. This was developed. It's, you can't account for everything in playtesting and development once it reaches, it's out there and it's in the hands of, thousands of people. I don't know. Those are my quibbles, but overall I loved it. And I'm shocked. I kept saying, I am shocked how much I'm loving this game.
Okay. I think when we picked this game to review, I could absolutely see how the expectations were relatively low. But I think when I was reading through the combat system, I was like, this is not good for me, but I have a feeling Sean may like this a lot, not knowing how it stacks up in the broader scheme. So,
yeah.
All right, that's enough for me on gameplay. Theme. This is really the key to this game in a lot of ways. And I will tip my hat for some of the reasons you outlined in gameplay. Deeply thematic experience, and made better by it. Made better by how it embodies the theme and how it brings it to life. I have no qualms with that. I could tell the story of in one of my games. I had one of my characters as the one with the long distance, the ranged combat ability where you can increase the die by 1. I don't know the character's name, but camping out on top of a mountain, setting up walls around me, and just kind of hanging tough up there until radiation flushed me out towards the end of the game. And then I had to go in and collect beacons. I had a lot of fun with having that character way up in the mountains, just picking off folks, and could imagine that story. One of Patrick, who I was playing, got the power glove and was coming rushing in and had one just amazing attack with it, but had another attack that he triggered that backfired on him completely. So the game tells a story, and not just through the fame board, but through some memorable moments. So I think from that standpoint, it really encapsulates. It's successful in what it's trying to do. It's trying to bring this battle royale style of game to life. I think it knocks it out of the park on that front.
Yeah, no, I do too. It made me want to go back and play Fortnite. I probably haven't played Fortnite in a year, and I'm like, oh, I would want to play Fortnite. Yeah, I really liked, one of my 2-player games with Raquel. It was this like crazy cat and mouse game. We were like laying and demolishing walls left and right. Like, and it was super cool, and it was very close. She wound up winning that game, but like just barely. Yeah, I think this is a thematic standout. Like it captures this whole feel really well, and there's definitely a story that's being told in the game. So, yeah.
All right, no guild thoughts, which brings us to final thoughts. And Sean, I actually have because we've heard the positivity. We'll get your review in a second, and we rate things at the Dukes of Dice on a 6-point scale, and this is likely to be on the higher end of the scale for Sean. We'll see where I end up on this. But Sean, I'm curious specifically, are you going to seek out, because you've been playing Empire's copy and borrowing Empire's copy, are you going to get your own copy of not just the base game, the retail edition, but the Kickstarter edition with the new characters, other modes, things along those lines? Have you already done so? I don't know. That's the question. What's the thought on this?
Okay, so I am not going to be buying a copy of Reload. However, I expect. Hold on. I expect that it will not survive the next culling at Empire, and so I'm placing dibs on buying the Empire copy of the next garage sale. However, so here's the problem. Not going to play it with Raquel. It's not a Raquel type of game. Chewy will probably like this, but we're probably a couple years off, probably at least 2 years off from that. Matthew wasn't crazy about it. Chris wasn't that crazy about it. Matt, yeah. I just don't know that it's something that we play 2 players. I don't know that I have people to play this with, which makes me kind of sad. But here's what I am thinking of doing. So we'll have the Empire copy. I am thinking about getting the expansions. So there's a very high probability that I will own the expansions, but not the base game for a while. And I would like to play this at SeanCon, possibly with up to 6 players, if I'm able to get my hands on the expansions.
Ooh. Okay. All right. Okay. So score-wise, we're at final thoughts. What's the summary then?
Yeah, so we rate everything here at the Dukes of Dice on a 6-point scale. 1 is poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun. 6 is an all-time favorite that is a contender for the top 10. And this is going to be squarely, maybe not squarely. No, I think this is a high 5 for me. 5 is a great game. We'll rarely turn down a play of it. That's kind of funny because it's not like anyone's really going to be offering to play this with me. So I won't have opportunities to turn it down. But if there's, I don't know. I think we'll have a lot of fun with it at SeanCon. I think this is very much, I would put this in like the beer and pretzels category of game. I wouldn't, and this is like a step below a miniature skirmish game, right? So a skirmish game where you've got just a couple of pieces and, you've got your terrain and you're painting them and there's a little bit more rules overhead there. This is kind of a step below that, which is nice. It's entry level. I'm not saying, hey, Alex, I need you to come to the table with, 8 pirates like in Kill Team or whatever. This is a lot more accessible in that way. So I think we'll have a lot of fun with this at SeanCon. I think this is something that middle school or high school Sean would have gone crazy for. Like, oh my God, this is blowing my mind, And so I think being with some of my high school friends, I think it's going to kind of feel like those gaming nights, back in the day.
Okay. Yeah, that score makes perfect sense to me. Unlike your score for Arc Nova, which makes no sense to me. Anyway, all right, Sean, I will not surprise you that I'm lower on the scale than you for this. And I think that could have been the thought even going into this game, just off of theme perhaps. But there are some times when I'll give a game a lower score, and I'll wonder what group is this for, or who would like this and why. This isn't the case with this game. I think there's a lot to love, and if that combat system clicks for you, and Battle Royale and that Fortnite kind of brought to life in a tabletop form sounds appealing to you as a game, I think it makes perfect sense that you would love this game, because there's a lot to love here. And even though I don't necessarily love those parts of this completely, there are things that I like about this. So I would play it again. It's not unplayable for me. It's not something I would never play again. But it's not something I need to have access to or own. So, Sean, I think this is a pretty clear 3 for me. Game is okay, not exciting. We'll play in the right situation. I'll be part of that 6-player game at SeanCon, absolutely. I don't dislike that game well enough. And my guess is I'll probably have some amount of fun doing so. But it lacked some clarity in the rules. It lacked some production finesse, and it lacked just some basic core, am I having fun with this? I just spent too much time in the rulebook, too much time sorting stuff out to really say, oh yeah, I love this game, I dug this game. Sean, I'll offer you an alternative here to Waiting on Empire's copy. I mean, I have a copy. If it fits in my bag, I could just bring the base game and you could just kind of have that.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess that works too.
Okay. Anyway, I wouldn't want you to deprived of the enjoyment of this game, because you certainly like it way better than I do. Yeah.
Here's another question. Do I need to get minis for this game? Because I could probably...
Yeah, better minis than what they have. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll paint them up, and... Ooh, that sounds like a fun project. It's not like I have anything else to paint, so...
Okay.
Oh, but there's 12. I'd have to find 12. Okay, maybe not.
All right. Well, you could just get the base game covered and then go from there. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's neither here nor there. All right. Well, that's our review of Reload. Sean giving this one a high 5, and I give this one an average 3, standard 3. All right.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
Next up, episode 251, Dukes Double Take on Between a Rock and a Hard Place, where we reviewed The King's Dilemma legacy game. Sean, this was a very rare Boxcars Award winner listening back to this one. You were only 3 games into your campaign at the time. I think I was 10 or 12 games into the campaign at the time, and we did our best to avoid spoilers. This is a game where you play it once and you're done. But you gave this one a 6. You said even just 3 games in, it drew you in thematically. You felt like you were a part of the small council in King's Landing. You liked the negotiation. You loved the story of the game, and you found yourself really hooked by that experience. Sean, I gave this one a 6 as well. I said I loved it, not necessarily for the mechanics, which I thought were fine, but for the story this told. I acknowledge that some of the thematic nature of the material, because they go and they have a huge disclaimer in the front of the rule book. They go hard at some of this stuff. It might not be perfect for some groups, but for our group, it was perfect. It made failure fun. Sean, did you play any other games in your campaign after we did this review?
Yeah, we did. We did play, and we got to about the halfway mark. And then this was June, and then we suffered from having sort of a what's the right term? A haphazard group. Like it wasn't so it was me, it was Matthew, it was Chris, and it was this other guy named Mike, who wound up kind of filling in for Rory. But then I can't remember, like Matthew dropped out, and then somebody wasn't going to be available until August, and then August came and we never picked it back up. And I'm really sad by that because I really want to finish this. And Queen's Dilemma is coming out. I'm totally on board with that. And I think it's just got to be, it's just always hard with these campaign type games, finishing them out. Even though they might be amazing, they might be incredible, and you give it a 6, it's just difficult. Especially like having to play with the same group of people, ideally, right? The one thing that we do consistently is we have our coin games, or excuse me, our 18xx games and our coin games, right? And so it's almost like I could do it with that group, but then we're not playing an 18xx or a coin game. And then it's hard to play this game at like a Wednesday at Empire when it's so loud and there's so much reading that you have to do, So I don't know. Like it's still a 6. I loved this play experience, and I hope there's a way we could figure out how to finish this because I'm from what you've said, I understand there's big payoff there, and
yeah,
I like being paid off, man. What can I say?
Yeah, I mean we finished the whole kit and caboodle. Like it's done. I won the campaign. I won't say how. I just will say I won. I ended up winning. And recently at a game night over at Jamie's, he said, "Hey, just so you're aware, like Queen's Dilemma is coming out on Kickstarter." It's like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "I hope you order that because we want let's get that same group together or a similar group together and play through it." And I anticipate we will. So yeah, this is sort of a timely double take because this is not live yet, but I think is expected to be within the next couple weeks, month, whatever else. But I'm already notified on launch for the Queen's Dilemma. That's an instant back for me. I will be getting my copy of that. I will be playing through a campaign with any luck. I really love the play experience, and I was glad to have some completion on that, some closure. Because, Sean, this came up infamously in the Dukes of Dice a long time ago. Pandemic Legacy Season 1. Somewhere, I don't know who has the copy, but somewhere there is a half-finished copy of Pandemic Legacy Season 1 from way, way, way back in the day with the group that we were playing it with. And we gave that one a 6-2, and even without the final closure on getting the thing done. So yeah, I hope you can finish it up at some point, Sean, but who knows? The track record's not great with that.
Well, it's funny you say that, Alex. So I do have that copy. I have 2 half-finished games of Pandemic Legacy Season 1. I started with Raquel and Mariah, and we got, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Well, there was one guild thought on this. It came from Alex Bastecki. He provided a short version, but because it's the only guild thought in the entire show, I'm going to give the full version its due, Alex. So, Alex Bastecki on the King's Dilemma. Are the gameplay elements that great? No. Does the widely varying playtime allow for a satisfying experience every game? Also no. Is the ending satisfying compared to other Legacy games? Not really. I felt like the game just ends. Final score? 5 on the Ducal scale. Wait, what? Well, I think the King's Dilemma is very much greater than the sum of its parts. The lore is rich and the player interaction can be robust, especially if you get into the lore and roleplay a tiny bit. There is some semblance of linear story, but to me it was overshadowed, in a good way, by just living in the world and trying to make your mark on it. The sticker system does this well, even if the effects are greatly abstracted. The mechanics are exactly what they need to be to not get in the way and keep the game on track and easy. The widely varying game time is inconsequential when you decide to sit down for 2 to 3 hour game session of it, regardless of how many games you get through. As soon as I heard about the Queen's Dilemma, I told my playgroup, and everyone was hyped. Given what has been hinted at so far, it feels like a complete evolution of the product. If they can keep the story elements and raise the gameplay to be a robust game instead of a framework, Queen's Dilemma might be an all-timer for our group. Sean, I think this will be one of the most anticipated game releases I will have had just about ever. I think maybe, if I recall from long ago, there was some anticipation for something like King of New York, back when I was a huge fan of King of Tokyo. This is a sequel where I'm very, very excited to see what comes about. So a lot of anticipation, but yeah, I would agree. A game that's greater than the sum of its parts, driven by theme, driven by story. If you can get a game group together, preferably one of 5, this game shines. Absolutely shines. I wish I could play another campaign of this, and maybe I guess I could after some time. I might have forgotten enough stuff, but an amazing experience. A true top 10 of all time for me. So, Sean, I hope you finish it, but I think it's unlikely. Stays at a 6 for you?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Okay, good. All right. 6 for both of us. It was Boxcars then. It's Boxcars now. That's the King's Dilemma. Sean, before we wrap things up, the best of the rest of the names we did not pick, but could have. And, Sean, this first one from BJ from Board Game Gumbo, Royale, which combined King from King's Dilemma and the Battle Royale concept. Incredibly clever, and lost out on what was basically a roll of the dice. So it was between that one and Justin's, and the die roll said Justin. So BJ, close but not quite. A good suggestion regardless.
And then Kyle Kelly suggested Fight for the Crown. Of course, there's a King's Dilemma element there, and there are even Crown fame tokens in Reload. So yeah, that works perfect.
Next up, Name Father, Steve O'Rourke with Game of Clones, referencing Game of Thrones and the King's Dilemma, sort of the vibe of that game, and the clones that you're battling with in Reload.
And then formerly Josh Inger, now Archie Inger, suggested Hail to the King, baby, which do you know what that's a reference to, Alex?
There's an Evil Dead reference, right?
Army of Darkness.
Okay.
But yeah. So yeah, I will always appreciate a Bruce Campbell reference.
And then Blaine Miley with Battle Royale Highness. So referencing again Battle Royale, Royal Highness. I think it's meant to be one of those before and after puzzles.
Before and afters.
Yeah. So Battle Royale, Royal Highness. So nice combination of things from Blaine. And that'll do it for this episode, Sean.
We did it. It's a little bit of a longer one. Whew, that's not too bad. All right.
That's not too bad. No, anything sub 2 hours is within the tolerable range for us. I don't know about listeners. I don't know. You might all find this way too long.
What about for editors? What about for editors?
Yeah, I don't know. Sean, I wish you the best of luck on the next episode, because I am going to be in tropical Anguilla the next time you record something, and then at a Gamers Ranch retreat. So you won't hear from me in 2 weeks, but you will hear from Sean. Sean, do you have a plan yet?
Yeah, we'll probably review an 18xx game. That's probably the plan.
Gross.
No, we're not going to do that. I don't know. I'm working on it. I got irons in the fire, so to speak. So
do you actually, or are you just saying that?
I'm just saying that.
Okay, I thought so. All right,
I'll just edit that out. I'll edit that out.
No.
Well, that's gonna. Well, that's gonna do it then for episode 276, King of the Hill. Thanks again to Justin Jacobson for that title. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on June 4th, 2022. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all is in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsor, Game Toppers LLC. Remember, if it's not a showstopper, it's not a game topper, also go to their website, gametoppersllc.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks, and by we, I mean just Sean. Until then, game on!